All right,
What's up, dudes? What's up,
What's
guys?
up, fellas?
What's up, guys?
How we doing?
Pretty good.
We've had a pretty crazy week. That's for
Bloody
sure.
Monday.
Oh man, let's get into it. What happened? I mean, we just had stability, to some degree, and then the bottom just dropped out. What caused it? Where did it come from?
I don't know. I mean, I like Rose's narrative of dollar strength a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's been what I've been focused on, and I will say it's like so far it's almost played out perfectly. Just dollar strength has been the catalyst over the last week, and it definitely took markets down with it, took everything down with it, and we're right at the point where I think it's time to make a decision. And I don't know. Part of me feels like the dollar has further to go, just because if you just think about any creature, you back them into a corner right before they die, they're going to probably give you their best fight. I'm not saying the dollar's going to die, but I do think it's positioned to go down drastically. So yeah, I could say I could see it going further, much to the dismay of a lot of people. I think there's a lot of people piling on shorts, or what I've been talking about, going along the euro or going along the pound, going along Bitcoin. I think that we saw a lot of that so far this year, and we've sold off tremendously over the last month. And yeah, I don't know if we're done. Is kind of where I'm at. We're right at a decision point when it comes to the dollar, in my opinion.
What do you think, Tyler? I mean, what's going on around the prime gossip circles? Anybody saying anything about this?
No, I mean, sorry. Most people just talk about Saylor, and everybody thinks the guy's crazy. But they're not in a bad way. It's nobody wants to see him fail, but it's they almost do. I think what people want to see is the narrative that Sailors went bankrupt on his buys, because he's so far down that it looks like he's gonna go bankrupt, but he doesn't have to make his first payment on the loan for 4 years. So a normal person would be bankrupt, destitute, but I think that's what everybody's really interested in, is to see what happens to MicroStrategy's stock as the Bitcoin price goes down to certain levels, and everybody wants to see how the general market reacts when certain levels are tested in relation to Saylor's levels. And then they also want to see how Saylor reacts, because holding over 100,000 Bitcoin at this point is a liability, since he's took on debt to secure it. And then the other belief is that he's going to issue more, that he's going to this is not the end. This guy is going to buy all of the Bitcoin. He's going to buy it all. And because he understands that he can have as big of a piece of it as he wants, to where there's only such a small piece left, and it's still the same thing. It's still 1 million Bitcoin or 21 billion. It's still the same thing. And so he understands that. And so everybody just that's the only thing anybody's really talking about besides the mining situation. But no one really thinks that's really an issue, because I mean it has so much hash rate that the hash rate going down is not really a bad thing. It just doesn't make sense. as a country, why would you want to push the mining out of your country? Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think like Ro had some pretty good thoughts on like maybe why that you know they would want to do that. But maybe we want to talk about Michael Saylor first. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
let's talk about Michael Saylor. Go ahead, Ro.
Well, okay. Michael Saylor is a badass, like through and through. I saw some videos of him talking about, I think it was either Apple or Amazon, maybe both, like back in the early 2000s, like why these companies are going to do amazing. And like fast forward 20 years, boom, like here we are, and they're the two most valuable countries in the world, companies in the world. So yeah, Michael Saylor, total badass. And the thing about that is, while it is a liability because he did sell debt to acquire Bitcoin, in my mind, this is like all that Bitcoin is locked up forever. Like I don't think it's like, I don't think that's going anywhere. Like, and it's just like a really awesome, badass public play. Like, it's pretty rare to see people do it in public, do anything in public. And I guess that's just the nature of blockchain now. But
I mean, look at
yeah,
that guy.
Yeah, total badass. So, but that being said, like, you know, the market didn't really bounce tremendously during that time. So it just kind of is like the state of the market where we're at right now.
There is now a new spot open for crazy cyber guy that's got wild theories and access to all the resources that
I mean, he's the guy that Bitcoin needed, right? Like, he's better than Roger Ver.
Definitely.
Like, there's not one person in the Bitcoin community that I would put up against Roger Ver. The best person we had was probably Jack Mallers. And like, this guy's better. Like, probably not, like, Jack Mallers is still a better advocate for Bitcoin as a whole. But like, this guy, I would put him on stage against anybody.
You know, we like to talk a lot about superheroes and supervillains and how you live long enough, you know, to be a supervillain. Where's Michael Saylor on the spectrum of where 10 is your John McAfee? You know, how does that, like, at some point, you know,
Saylor's Thanos, man.
I mean, he's pretty much like what you need from a corporate perspective.
No, he's not
like,
Thanos to the world. He's Thanos, like, or no, he's not Thanos to Bitcoin. He's Thanos to the world. Like, Bitcoin is his glove that he's like assembling.
Yeah, I do think like everybody on CNBC hates him. Like, everybody's just like,
he's probably not a big fan of them. I mean, I've seen some of his interviews where he does not like the question. He'll tell you that was just a silly question to ask, and you just don't get it. And he's kind of like a very forceful old 70-year-old guy or whatever.
You know? No, I mean, yeah. No, I don't think he's 70.
Got to be old as. No, look at those laser eyes, man.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, they do 60. Probably. Anyway, he's the advocate Bitcoin needs right now, and it's like, just like reminiscing back to like this market cycle chart where we're at. And like, we're at the stage where institutional investors are getting in, and all of them are super private about it. And then you have this guy just fucking things up for everybody else, saying, I'm buying a shit ton of Bitcoin. And I think that's what generates a lot of hate for him on the Wall Street, the finance side. It's like, hey, you're screwing this up for everybody. Don't do this for the public. And so because it's not time for the public yet. So yeah, I think that's I could see that being a narrative to run with. But if we want to talk about my hot take on China, or at least the hot take I saw on Twitter, it was where was it? It was China's done mining the majority of Bitcoins because like there's only 9% left, and like as opposed to like attributing resources to all of to Bitcoin and you know fighting that fight for diminishing returns, there's still so much space in the crypto sphere that it would make a lot more sense to attribute those resources to something else. And so I think that was like a really like a hot take that I really appreciated. Is like, you know, they've been in the game for years. They have their stack of Bitcoin. Again, there's only like 9 to 10% left, and you know, they're like, hey, it's like a good investor. You know, like you might not catch the top, but you got your gains, and you might exit a little early, but you're not gonna wait for the crash. Not saying that like not an analogy about price, but more so just like mindset. So yeah, I really appreciated that.
So what do we think about China now? Are we happy with what China's doing? Or are we like, gosh, China, there you go, just doing your China things again?
They're just ahead, man. It's just like I was talking to my friend, you know, about yesterday about some of these guys who are moving big stacks. Like the guy that bought 500,000 ETH, he has a philosophy of you got to trim all the way up. Even if you believe it's the future, you've got to trim to have money to buy the dips. And like that's called being the market maker, you know, and like on a macro scale. And China is they are the technology computation market maker. And I think this is them saying like, you guys finally figured it out, like here, and we'll go and use our compute power for something else. Like, yeah, they might turn it off for Bitcoin mining, but they're not gonna. I mean, China's not gonna just like lose all that computational power. So I don't know. I think China's just staying 50 years ahead, like they always have.
In some regards, yeah, I agree with you. I think it does tilt their hand a little bit, just to the notion that they are, you know, it's not like China's dumb. You know, it's not like they don't know what they're doing. They got into Bitcoin before anybody else. Maybe not the government, but likely the government. Yeah, I do think it's like it just kind of tilts their hand because on first glance it seems like a really dumb move. Like, why wouldn't you want to be part of the infrastructure for Bitcoin going forward? But like, I think if you dig it a little bit deeper, it's just like, yeah, okay, there is other opportunities. You know, Bitcoin is only just now becoming institutional. Crypto is just now becoming institutional. And that's when, you know, that's like the game. Like once you actually get it on a national or a global scale, that's like when the game starts if you're a global superpower. So yeah, I think I don't know. It's pretty interesting. I think it's a really intelligent move, but I just don't know what the next step is. Unless it's the what is it? CBDC, CBDD? I don't even know. The central bank digital coin, digital. Yeah, whatever. yeah, whatever it is, whatever, if it's a centralized digital coin, I think that'd be dumb. And who knows?
I got a question for you guys. I saw a Twitter thread recently that made me think. How many just an estimate, how many crypto Twitter influencers would you say have been bought and paid for by the CCP? Like not Chinese crypto Twitter influencers, like general big accounts.
Justin Tron.
No, I'm talking about like Matty Graham, Matty Sino Capital, or maybe Size Chad, maybe Big Beta Sensei. Maybe I'm saying like how many do you think? Because I mean, I never even thought about it until I saw there was an argument that was going on between these two guys, and they were trying to get a debate scheduled. And the guy said, "I will debate, but you just have to say one bad thing about the CCP. Well, you just have to say one thing that you disagree with about the CCP." And like, he absolutely would not, like, he blocked him on Twitter and said that he was being aggressive and all kinds of stuff, and like refused to engage. And it just made me think, like, I wonder.
I think Wolf of Wall Street says.
I'm sure. No, I'm not sure. I can't say something
Scott
like that.
Melker. Yeah. No, I don't know. I haven't really given it too much thought. I mean, it's a good something to ponder for sure. Because I do think, in the decentralized world we live in, there's probably a lot more centralization than we think. Money is a very powerful tool, regardless of what form it comes in.
Because you don't always know where the money comes from until you do.
But yeah, what else we got?
Well, go ahead, Tyler.
I did see something else that's been talked about that was kind of shocking. Is like, it does kind of seem like the idea that Ripple is going to be a thing is like starting to like everybody's kind of under the impression that they're going to get the littlest slap on the wrist from the SEC, and that because no one retail really has the access to buy it, that there's going to be some pretty good movement on the upside. That seems to be the general consensus.
I've heard similar things in my circles as well. All in Ripple.
What a world. Can we go back to the other timeline?
Well, speaking of timelines, we kind of, what I've heard from you guys a little bit is, if we're gonna, kind of deal with this pullback in a responsible way, we're going to consolidate a little bit, go sideways, possibly throughout the rest of summer, a couple months, and just kind of build steam and gather a little bit more consumer confidence and stuff like that. Is that still kind of the narrative that we're looking at going forward? Have things changed in the last week with this recent pullback? And then let's get into this pullback a little bit. Let's get into some of the individual cryptos. Not everything has kind of reacted the same way, and there's some interesting kind of movements around, but yeah, what do we think?
I shared a chart with Will earlier from an anonymous crypto Twitter account by the name of Foo. The idea is Foo is probably Suzu from Three Arrows Capital, or some combination of maybe some of the Three Arrows guys. And he put up a chart months ago, and it's pretty much identical to the Bitcoin chart right now. I shared it in Discord.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because these sorts of big pullbacks happen mid-cycle, and they can also mark beginnings or ends of patterns and cycles as well. So you have chop, but you also have big what do you call them, corrections or crashes, or even the other way, spikes, and bull runs, and sometimes it's when cycles kind of overlap and reset. So always looking at like where we are and the relative ups and downs is kind of a good thing. So Tyler, what are we looking at here?
So this was drawn, it looks like in February, and it has us going up a little bit higher than where we actually went, and then coming down to the low upper 20s, and then crab ranging throughout the summer until it looks like around August, before Bitcoin starts to rally up to, I think they've got around 250K is the top on this chart, and that's going to be in December. So he drew this in February, and so far, and he drew like kind of some, narratives, but they're more silly narratives. But yeah, I mean, if this is Suzu, or Kyle tweeting from an anonymous account, I mean, a lot of people have made a ton of money following this guy for the last like 6 to 9 months throughout all of DeFi and everything. It was like this guy was like 10 days ahead of everybody. But this was, this is kind of the best. This is the best predictive chart that I've seen going around.
I want to know what this guy was thinking was going to happen in October of 2021. What happens there where we go through a time warp and something happens right at that $50,000 level in October that
I had something similar like that on my BTC chart that I was looking at, and I was like, how did I expect that to happen? Like, how did I expect this to go backwards in time?
It breaks my brain when I see charts like that. Like sometimes you see that and it's like, it can't happen. It cannot happen. And then it's like, wait a second, anything can happen. Let's not get, caught up in a chart here. But yeah, no, this would be,
what if options gapped up and then gapped back down?
Yeah.
I just read A Universe from Nothing. It's just like a physics book, not a physics book, but like made for retail. And they talked about how we're in a flat universe. So the only way this can happen is if we stop expanding, like the universe stops expanding, and then we start going backwards. It's kind of, so I think he's expecting that in October.
Either that, or he's got a quantum mindset, which means that September moving forward, there's one price, and then when you get to that point, if you think about drawing a vertical line up and down, you get to that point where time's done going backwards, so to speak. Well, really, the prices, you got 2 different price points, and then from that point beyond, it's actually 3 different prices at once. So maybe there's a catalytic event that happens right at that point, because then immediately after that, you go from 3 down to 2 down to 1 point, but you're higher, and then you spike. So from a quantum perspective, there could be a lot of stuff going on. And what's that fuel for Bitcoin? What's that fuel this fall that gives people the confidence or the money to flow in? Is it a dollar related event? Is it a COVID related reoccurrence type of thing in the fall? Is it a unpredictable geopolitical sort of situation. But what would actually cause the price of Bitcoin at this point, like based on what we know, based on where we are, to go from, well, now 34 or whatever, but kind of looking at this chart, kind of like 50 to 250. Seems like a lot. It seems like it would take a lot right now.
I think what it would take is that if they came through and they said that there was election fraud, and instead if they reinstalled Trump, then the dollar would go crazy and everything else would die. Like everything else would just tank. But if they go to make us have another election, like a special election, then I could see that uncertainty driving the price of Bitcoin from 50K to 250K because of the uncertainty of what's going to happen. And the idea that if one side wins, then Bitcoin wins. And if the other side wins, then the dollar wins. And I could see that being a narrative that drives it. Other than that, the only other thing is GBTC unlocks being thought as bearish and people selling Bitcoin because GBTC unlocks, but that Bitcoin going into the hands of the people who are selling their GBTC to go and buy more Bitcoin. And then that's more Bitcoin that's taken out of the supply. And so then when all these people are going back to buy their Bitcoin who sold because they thought that we were going back down to 10K or whatever, now they're forced to buy back higher and there's less Bitcoin for them to buy.
I mean, are institutions continuing to buy right now? Are they accelerating their buying this week? Have they manufactured this FUD pullback, or is this from China, or is this our government? Like when it comes to this, to the lockup, the supply of Bitcoin, I mean, we've got Michael Saylor and his public pledges to, continue to put pressure on that. You have increasing world adoption just in terms of knowledge, and every child born today understands or is going to understand that this is the regular world, whereas people who have had one foot in the old world and one foot in this new world as it's developed have a different perspective. And we all know are the people in our lives that are unable to truly embrace this new world as well, because they've got essentially both feet in the old world. But with every day that goes by, you have just kind of that general world movement. But in the immediate sense, when you see a sell-off like this, is Bitcoin changing hands? Are alts? I mean, alts are kind of being drained, in order to kind of take care of whatever's happening on the macro Bitcoin, maybe ETH side of things. But what's going on? Like, did the institutions just get a lot more Bitcoin, or are they about to, or did they just get screwed by some of the big bag holders of our crypto, ecosystem that we all know and we talk about whenever they tweet? What's going on? Where are we at that point in, the exchange between parties?
Leverage is being purged from the system for sure. Not only through price action, but like it's being removed. Like part of Kraken getting ready to IPO and like becoming a bank is that they're about to start putting a lot more stringent requirements on Americans to use leverage. And so it seems like everybody's trying to purge leverage from the system.
Who's on leverage?
Everybody. The amount of leverage that like if you own an alt, that's like a form of leverage on Bitcoin, in a lot of ways. But even like hard leverage is super commonplace in crypto. People buying stuff on credit cards. You have Saylor, the leader of the pack. All that is leverage.
Did you hear Saylor's rant about like, spend all your money and buy Bitcoin, and then spend all your time and figure out how to borrow more money and buy Bitcoin, and then spend all your time to figure out what all you can sell to go and buy more Bitcoin, and then after that, if you have to keep anything more, like remortgage your house and then buy more Bitcoin, and then like it's just
he doesn't give a shit anymore.
No,
he is that
like
guy.
He said that,
man.
I mean, that's his playbook.
That's the type of shit a guy with 100,000 Bitcoin says.
I wish I had 100,000 Bitcoin.
I mean, if you have a lot of anything, you're telling people all about it, So
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do think, there's still people that are very interested in crypto. I just put together this little chart. I'm going to share with you guys. But I am a little bit worried about where the market is right now, and I do expect us, specifically alts, to bleed for a little bit longer. But this chart that I just sent out is a moon chart. And I thought it was just kind of interesting to see, since today is a full moon, what the full moon has done for Bitcoin over the last year. And pretty much, with the exception of May, the moon has led, or just been like right around the bottom, a local bottom. May was the obvious exception. But yeah, so I think, today's the full moon. I could expect us to go, take out the local highs, hopefully. 42 all the way up to 50K. There's definitely some big resistance around 45, 47. That's definitely an area I'm looking for, a pretty large negative reaction. But if you come back to Fu's chart, that would like kind of line up with like this. Everybody gets excited. Oh, the bull market's back, yada, yada, yada. And then that just wipes everybody out again. We take out the lows. We go down to, I still think it's skeptical that we'll retest 20K, the previous all-time high. But if we do, that's, I would call that a bottom for sure. So yeah, I do think we will kind of go up, maybe get a fake out, get some people flip bull, and then yeah, go just like really kind of go hard down again one more time before we start ramping back up. And I mean, this chart, like hell, it could be Jason, he said solid strong Q1, solid Q2, summer lull, and then strong Q4. And
the only reason I don't think it's Jason is because I was in the hero trading pit early, and Fu was one of the first people in the hero trading pit, and him and Messi were like best of buddies, and Messi and Ledge are best buddies, and they didn't know Jason. So that's the only reason I think it might be one of the 3AC guys. And if you look, like, it's obviously somebody known. They blacked out their trading view.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, either way though, like, let's just say that these are two separate people. they are essentially forecasting the same thing, and it's pretty. Those are pretty. Well, Jason's really smart. So yeah, just something to keep in mind as we kind of, for lack of a better term, suffer through the next month or two. I think it is going to get a little bloodier. It's going to just going to be consolidation. It's not going to be the sort of thing where you're going to like buy shit. Well, depending on who you are, it's you can buy in consolidation and just expect to hold. That's fine. This is a great place to accumulate. But yeah, this is not something you're trying to like leverage trade, in my opinion.
I don't know. This looks like you get leverage long at the end in a couple days.
I mean, you could. Don't get me wrong, I mean, on the moon chart, it's like, hey, we want to take a leverage long to 41, 42K. Sure. That's definitely a possibility. But yeah, for where we're at, this is not one of those places where, in my opinion, where you say, hey, I'm going to get long here at 34, 3 to 5 times leverage, and I'm expecting 250K. I just don't think that's realistic.
Well, there is this Anon that I've chatted with for a long time that has a pretty decent reputation. And he would call for a bottom of like 1,666 for Bitcoin, and I forgot which exchange it was, but if you don't remember, there was one exchange that Wick tagged that number. And it was like, it happened on one exchange, right? None of the rest of the exchanges. It was on that March crash, whatever. And everybody was saying, whatever had bottomed. Well, he came out and said that he's staking his reputation and saying that like yesterday, in his opinion, like was the bottom, like that full moon where the full moon set. He was saying that like in his opinion, like he's willing to stake his reputation and say like that was the bottom. Now I'm with you and with the guy on the chart. Like I think we still got lower to go, but man, if yesterday was the bottom, that's going to make me feel a whole lot better.
Well,
yeah,
Ro, will you take a minute and kind of like I've talked to you about this. I mean, I think this has been something you've followed as a Bitcoin person and as a chart person. For whatever reason, you've been a full moon person for a little while too. Yeah. So I know this has been just kind of like a fun working theory that you've kind of been testing on the side as like just a exercise in trading and an exercise in tracking and just watching and observing and looking at potential, outside of the box patterns. So yeah, you want to take a minute to share maybe like what your most current hypotheses are regarding that, and maybe like what some interesting parallels other than, or even including that chart that you showed, thoughts on kind of the full moon or the astrological patterns or anything that you've been into for a little while?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I first heard about these sorts of patterns in like 2014, 2015, when I was like getting into crypto big time. And, it's not something I trade. It's not something I trade. It's just something I like to monitor every now and then. I haven't looked at it all this year until today, and I thought it was like interesting to see. So it's not like something that I use religiously when I do my work, but it is something that is really interesting to me. And actually, the person who really brought it to my attention was one of our former Subway managers. She mentioned it to me when I was in the business, and she was like, "Is it a full moon today?" And knowing full well that it was, because people were acting crazy. It was just like it was a really chaotic day. Things just didn't go according to plan. And from that moment, I really like thought about some stuff, and Um, you know what, as a race, or as the human race, you know, there's so much cool shit that we've discovered and uncovered over the millennia that we've been here, but there's still so much stuff that we don't know. And I think this is going to be like pretty woo woo, but like I do think like there are, you know, huge like extraterrestrial bodies that have an effect on everything. You know, they exert forces on everything around us. Whether we can understand them or not is a different story, but they do have an effect. And just like monitoring the full moon versus, you know, the new moon or whatever. You know, I'm not an expert. I haven't like done research on the moon or anything, but I do have an affinity for physics and understanding like the way the world works, the way the universe works, and there are forces that act on us all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. And the moon is definitely one of those. So.
Yeah, 100%. And some of the biggest crypto traders use the moon 100%, like as like over TA. So they will use the moon as like their first layer, and then sometimes they'll even use like Saturn or Jupiter, because Jupiter is so big, or you know, Saturn has such attraction with its rings and its moons. But yeah, they'll use the astrology first, and then they'll apply the TA to fit the astrology narrative. But one thing I want to look at this chart is Mercury goes into retrograde 3 times a year, right? And what that means is that Mercury appears to travel backwards across the sky. And when that happens, it usually signals times of chaos on Earth when Mercury's in retrograde. And for 2021, the Mercury retrograde periods were January 30th through February 21st, and then May 29th through June 22nd. And so May 29th through June 22nd, like basically we ended a Mercury retrograde period at a full moon. And, you know, that could, I mean, a lot of people are using that to ascribe like the signal of the bottom, and also why we like performed so weirdly during that like time period. The next Mercury retrograde is September 27th through October the 23rd. And maybe that's the time warp on Fu's chart. You know, maybe Fu took Mercury retrograde into consideration when drawing the chart.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know anything about that, but I mean, I'm not going to discount it and say like it doesn't have an effect on us. But am I going to use that for my trading strategies? No, like that's not what I'm looking
It
for.
only happens 3 times a year, right? So it's like it's not like a monthly occurrence.
So what can just understanding that we are, we're physical bodies, we're subject to the laws of physics, subject to the energy fields beyond Earth and from Earth, and because we are subject to all those things, there's no way to really put in perspective how they affect us.
Just relativity.
Yeah.
And how relative they are makes them more relevant, and then more relevant makes them to the narrative, and then the narrative, you know, defines everything. I mean, that's the best you can do, right? Like you don't know exactly how it's going to play out. You just know it's significant.
Yeah. And what about relative significance? You know, it's like, how do we know that the moon is the most significant force or something even worth tracking? It's funny because because we can see it. It's the only thing up there in the sky that's like putting off light like that. And we're like, oh, there's only one. It's there every day. It's got its different phases, and it moves the oceans up and down. It's powerful, right? It screws with our gravity, anything that can mess with the Earth's gravity and bodies that big. Well, we're what, 98% water. So if it can move the ocean, it can move our bodies. But how do we know that that physical move? Maybe it just makes my ankle swell. Maybe maybe it makes my knee act up a little bit because there's a water, pull that's different on my body. How do we know that that changes behavior? No, we don't necessarily. We've got our theories as societies and humans of, werewolves and, all sorts of crazy things that happen. And maybe there's truth to it. Maybe there's not. You may believe in that. You may believe in aliens, but we don't know necessarily that the moon changes are the most significant effect on us. But it's interesting enough because, when we do track it, we do track certain things. We as humans, we like narratives. We like to fill in the gaps and make things make sense. But sometimes you do stumble upon something and you can ride that wave for a little while. And that chart that we drew, that looks pretty good. That, it's like, okay, maybe I should start watching this. But Ro, you've probably got 3-4 years worth of data on just kind of, your sample size has gotten large enough to where it's like, do you think anything? Do you draw any inferences? Do you see certain patterns or anything just in general with the moon?
So it's not consistent, there are periods of time where it is consistent, like this year, but like there are other times, I think during the 2017 top, it topped at a full moon. And then the bear market was like pretty consistently like a local top. So it's not perfect one way or another. And there's times where when it misses, and I'm sure, and I didn't track it all throughout like 2019, in parts of 2018. So when we were just consolidating, it's probably not very useful. Yeah, it's really probably much more helpful in a trending market. But no, I do think it absolutely could be implemented as a strategy along with some other things. Like if you include like some simple moving averages or Heikin-Ashi or something along those lines, it could very well be a trading strategy. But for me personally, I just kind of try and monitor my behavior during the days before and after a full moon, and just in my meditation practice, I'll try and figure out how I'm feeling, what I'm feeling, it's just something to monitor. I think it's just good to be aware of, because I do think, everything has an effect on us, whether or not we realize it.
If you take everything in aggregate, you've got plenty of people. I'm just kind of new to it. I was just bringing it up because I know Rose had just kind of like a interest in it, but apparently it's a thing. Apparently it's a thing that people follow. Maybe it has a name. I don't know if you guys know what the name of it is in charting or following moon patterns with trading behavior, or particularly to crypto or anything like that. But, the concept of that is interesting enough to where if enough people pick that up, it's just baked in. It's part of the, whatever you call it, certain people, everybody's aware of certain patterns, trading patterns now. And so it kind of becomes comes full circle, or the prophecy is fulfilled based on everybody's preemptive understanding of this. Might be what's happening, and when you have that kind of knowledge baked into markets, at some point, this could become something as well, particularly with all the young folks getting into crypto right now with their obsession with things going to the moon. So I definitely see in 5 years some weird anomaly where full moon stuff is baked into certain, taught patterns and awarenesses and stuff like that. It's not too far off. We as humans have always tried to bring things back to the stars and the skies when we're trying to give meaning to stuff. And it's just a stone's throw away from these financial markets that people are trying to understand.
Totally.
Cool. Well, what else we got? What else is interesting we want to get into?
Do we want to talk about some alts or not? Again, I think my broad opinion is that we'll bleed for a while. I think most of the damage is done. Everything took a 50 to 90%, depending on what you were in, crash over the last month. So I do think most of the damage is done, but I don't think it's like, unless you're accumulating, time to open up your longs yet. I do think we do. I think we probably have a little bit more downside, or at least consolidation. But that being said, I will preface this with like, that's not financial advice, and I could definitely be wrong. Part of me thinks that like, when would be the best time for everything to start really get running is when people are the most fearful. And, I definitely am experiencing some fear in the market right now. So.
Got to run to the fire. Like run to the fire, but don't run in the fire. If you can. There's a lot of fear in the market, right? Man, I was talking to a few people at 60,000, we're hovering around 60,000, 55,000. They're like, should I buy Bitcoin? I'm like, yeah, buy it. Should I buy Doge? I'm like, if you want, but like, probably not. If you don't have Bitcoin, don't buy Doge. And they're like, well, Bitcoin's so high. And I'm like, you're asking me about Doge? And now it's back down to 30,000. And everybody's scared. Nobody's like, oh, it's time to buy? Well, remember the conversation we had a month ago, which was you're trying to figure out if Bitcoin was too high of a price. It's half off. But like, man, it's just so funny to see, how things change instantly with like people's game plan. I understand how casinos just rake it in. I mean, it's got to be so easy. Yeah. I don't know.
Leave it to our former president to bankrupt, what was it, 7 casinos?
I don't know.
Anyway, I like our positions, broadly speaking. I think like Link and Zcash specifically, incredible plays. And I think they're gaining a lot of narratives going into like the next bull run. Zero knowledge proofs are going to be huge. MINA just came out. I don't know. Link, as an oracle, as the main oracle in all of the entire crypto space. All of these things are vital to the ecosystem and the ultimate like adoption of crypto in the globe. So I do like those. Otherwise, Sol I think is going to be big, but just kind of all like just everything in where it's at right now, I could totally see us just bleeding for a little bit longer, especially against Bitcoin. So yeah, it's just one of those places where it's tough to like get excited about the market right now.
I don't know. I tend to disagree, man. I think that this is a place where you are going to find insane value for really good projects. Like you got Kusama that's on like a 30% discount. I mean, it's got a lower circulating supply than Bitcoin, and people are required to lock up their coins for like sometimes over a year to fund a parachain, which that means that supply is like locked up. It's they get it back, and so the price, like you got stuff like Poct Network, which was a bunch of the Ethereum core developers kind of left and started a new project that not a lot of people know about. That the price of that token OTC was above $1, and now the demand's at like 10 cents. I mean, so I think that like if you were shopping for value, like there were a lot of opportunities I passed on that I really wanted in on when the market was inflated, that I was afraid to get in on because of downside. And I think you're right. I think the market as a whole, there is a lot of downsides still to be had because there's still a lot of fat. But I think some of these really, really, really good projects, like this is where you shove in on them and like you're going to be rewarded tenfold. But again, going back to the fat, like I had somebody message me just yesterday, was told to talk to you about some crypto. What you think of Shiba Inu? And it's like, that was like a cold message. Like the last time I heard from this guy was 2017. What kind of, well, I'm not going to read that, but yeah, December of 2017, heard from the guy, and then cold message. What do you think about Shiba Inu? And it's like, there's still new money that's going to come into the space, but like some of these people still have to be punished. Like lessons weren't learned. So
yeah, no,
I don't know. I guess I'm hot and cold. I agree with you on the market, I guess in general, that it needs to go lower, but I disagree on like about being excited. Like if you're excited about this space and you're excited about the innovation that's going on, there are that basket of projects that like are at lifetime value buys right now.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah. I think I think what I was referring to is like as a trader, if you're trying to like trade this market, it's really, unless you're a range trader, like you trade consolidation, this is not the time to be like opening swing positions. But if you are like an investor, and you like to, like, if you can accumulate a position, even if you can't, like you just want to buy something and hold it. If you're prepared to wait for months, then I think now's a great time, because to Tyler's point, you're getting 50 to 70% discounts on a lot of these things that just from like a month or two ago. So could you lose half your value? Like one of the best phrases in trading is like, just because some things decline 50% in value doesn't mean it can't decline 50% more. So just know, if you decide to do that, you can lose half the value, but yeah, I do think now is a much better time to buy than it was a month or two ago.
I do want to share my can I share my screen? Let's see how I do that. My ETH BTC chart that I drew is starting to look. Let's see.
It's pretty solid.
That's what I'm saying. Now we just got to get the finished product.
Yeah. You've also got something weird projecting going on. Yours is happening right there. Interesting. Man, I've got to do some studying. Gonna get back to the basics and figure out what I'm missing here.
Yeah. Some weird time dilation stuff going on there.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on ETH as it relates to Bitcoin? Are they moving in tandem right now? We just trying to sort things out?
Nah, S bottomed. I think they're trying to push the FUD that 1559's a no non-starter. Now I'm even hearing stuff about like, what if 1559 gets delayed? You know, but in reality, I don't know if you guys saw about the vendors that lost like $750 million. Like, how much money did you see that? The Fireblocks blunder. So Stakehound is the number 2 ETH staking competitor to Lido Finance, right? And Stakehound sued Lido for using STETH for their wrapped ETH solution. And Stakehound, they lost their users' private keys. So the second largest staked ETH pooled solution has lost their users' private keys. So hundreds of thousands of ETH just got like burned. So I don't know what the fix is going to be on that, but I know that there are some really upset people.
Wow. Oh man, not your keys, not your coins. Oh, that's brutal though.
So brutal.
Sucks.
That's super bullish for ETH though.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as convinced it's bottomed. Again, like ETH had the strongest chart pre-breakdown, and it still has the strongest chart. It just depends on I think there is a possibility where ETH hits our entry point. And there's a possibility where we go sub 0.04, like right around 0.04 is like where I think would be the worst case scenario for ETH. And if that happens, I say we take the trade again.
Well, if that happens and it holds, then that's the new paradigm. Because like the amount of ETH that's going to get changed hands at that level. I heard a lot of people saying that if ETH flips Bitcoin, that's going to be the best thing in the world for Bitcoin, because it's going to kick all the Bitcoin core developers in gear to realizing that like stagnation's not the best solution.
I mean, yeah, but at that point, I think it would be too late. You know, one of the main use cases of Bitcoin is it being the biggest. You know, and once it loses that, it's just a store of value. And then there's other things. For instance, that would potentially deflationary monetary supply that become better stores of values. But yeah, if I mean, I see the narrative, but like, yeah, I have a hard time seeing that as a positive thing for Bitcoin.
I think it could be a good thing. I mean, you've got a slingshot effect. You know, at some point, dominance will flow back. You know, there'll be a leverage crisis, or there'll be these are early markets. These are early developing broad markets now. And you're going to have collapses. You're going to have several things that wipe out a lot of good players. You know, that's in the cards. And when those sorts of things happen, they flow into your safe haven asset. That's kind of like Bitcoin is the gold of the crypto universe. And whenever people get really, really scared, you know, if the system is intact, nothing's as valuable as Bitcoin, when that's the common mental unit, the common denominator. Ethereum, I mean, in an evolving type of world, it's like Ethereum might be, something similar. We're kind of getting back to, well, maybe at this point, Ethereum kind of is silver to gold. It's like, it's different. It's got, some additional utilities, it's more practical in a lot of sense, but I mean, it's store and in a safe haven type environment. I mean, we're building this world so quickly. Whenever it's done, with that phase of growth, which maybe kind of this continued cycle, but it'll be put to the test, and it'll get the life sucked out of it. And when that happens, I mean, the smart money will already be back in Bitcoin. So I think that just in general, a stretching of the dominance down to 10% is ultimately healthy. It's bubbly. That can be sustained only for good times. But during bad times, it's like, all right, cool. You want to be in Bitcoin. But right now, Coinbase is selling Doge to the general public. So, it'll be some time, I think.
They're going to list Sheeb, and then they never did.
Did they put Sol on Coinbase?
I think so. I think they're working on that. I know Kraken's adding Sol and Serum, and Kraken's adding a lot of assets. Speaking of, in the whole Solana ecosystem, I think Serum is the winner. And like, it's getting burned. The supply is just getting burned and burned and burned right now. And like, its price is still so low.
I listened to the Uncommon Core podcast, talk about Solana, and Kyle from Multicoin, talked about Serum. It's like, obviously Sam has been developing Solana and all of that ecosystem, but he recognized the need for other people to develop the ecosystem as well in order for it to gain traction worldwide. And so he hasn't been the one developing Serum. He's leaving that for other developers to come and ultimately like develop on. And so it's like both a brilliant play and like also like just like, damn, because you would love to have Sam behind that. You'd love to have Sam building a DEX and getting shit done as he does. But yeah, I think it is. It's like it's one of those like longer term. If Solana has really kind of becomes a major player, and Serum might lag a little bit, but it could definitely be the winner of that kind of ecosystem.
Cool. Well, probably should wrap this up here. Any final thoughts? What do we have to look forward to? Let's do that. What do we have to look forward to this next week? I'll start. My sentiment is, this is a good buying opportunity. Things are on sale. However, things are still uncertain. So, run to the fire. Don't run into it. We could have longer to go down. We could, be in for some really tricky times. It could be really boring. And we could just kind of go sideways and bob around, for a little while. But I think this is where you stack. This is where you accumulate. This is where you take whatever you've got on the sidelines. This is where you, pull a little bit of, whatever you can pull together and get a little bit bigger position than you would have gotten in the middle of the bull run. Hopefully you were smart, and you weren't too exposed to too much of the hype stuff. But it's also a good time to look at your positions in case we are in store for a 2 to 3 month or longer consolidation. Make sure you're in the stuff you want to be in. That's where I'm at. So yeah, I'm buying the stuff I like for the long run. But I'm going to be very careful not to deplete myself, because we could go lower. And just like any good dollar cost averager, you want to, or crypto cost averager, however you're doing it, you want to have a little bit of firepower always. It could not be the end. So that's where I'm at. And I think that maybe next week we could be around this area. We could have gone lower. I'm kind of hoping we go lower, because this kind of stuff gets me going. I love it. I get to buy everything I want.
I think for me, buy base layer protocols, especially ones that are doing cool stuff and different stuff if you believe in them. So buy Ethereum, look at new and interesting things like Kadena, look at things like MINA, look at things like Kusama, Polkadot, Cardano, Bitcoin Cash, Zcash, things that are doing things different on the base layer that applications can be built on top of, and that you believe are philosophically sound. Because I guess in the grand scheme of things, you could buy something and get rich, but if you hate that community, it's not going to be any fun. So I think buying things that you think are cool and you're philosophically sound with, but sticking to things that are in the base layer and not diversifying into the derivatives on top of it until the market is in a clear bull trend, I think would be the best advice I could give, and to look forward to over the next week.
Buy Zcash.
There you have it. All right, guys. Fantastic. I enjoyed it as always. Good conversation. We got into a lot of cool stuff. Markets have been tumultuous, and we all kind of agree there's a lot of opportunity here, but tread with caution. We'll see where we're at next week. Catch you guys later.
Peace.